Have you ever asked God for something and you end up waiting long periods of time for Him to give you what you've asked for? Have you ever found yourself consistently praying for God to help you in an area of your life, and it feels like God is not listening, or you see that nothing is happening? In every Christian's life, there comes a point where we really have to go by faith when we don't hear an answer from God as soon as we would like to. And so in Luke 18, we find Jesus speaking a parable that reveals to us what God expects from us when it comes to us praying to Him, and also gives us insight into how God sees our circumstances and situations. So in Luke 18 it says, "He spoke a parable to them, that men always ought to pray and not lose heart, saying, There was in a certain city a judge who did not fear God nor regard man. Now there was a widow in that city, and she came to him, saying, Get justice for me from my adversary. And he would not for a while, but afterward he said within himself, Though I do not fear God nor regard man, yet because this widow troubles me, I will avenge her, lest by her continual coming she weary me. Then the Lord said, Hear what the unjust judge said. And shall God not avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth?" So a couple of things that we can pick up from this passage. The aim of this parable is that we must always pray and not lose heart. Whenever we are praying and whenever we are asking God to help us in our situations, to make a way for us, and we see that nothing is happening, it is very easy and it is very likely for us to lose heart. Anybody would. I mean, if you're praying and you're asking God for something to happen, or for a way to be made, or for something to come into your life, and nothing is happening, it can be very easy to lose heart. But Jesus is encouraging us here that we always ought to pray. Well, what is so special about prayer? Well, prayer is very important in the life of a Christian because it communicates relationship. Prayer is very important in the life of a Christian because prayer is the means by which we communicate to God. It is the way that we relate to God. It is only through prayer that we can come before God and ask of Him whatever we need. Prayer is very important, and despite us not getting an answer immediately from God, we must not lose heart. How often do you talk to God? How often do you pray? Do you only go to God whenever you need something, or do you go to God every morning and every night? How serious we take prayer determines how successful our Christian life is, because our success in Christian life depends on how strong our relationship with God is. We cannot have a strong relationship with anyone unless there is communication. In our human relationships, we need to communicate in order to build friendships, to build relationships, to build trust between two people. And if that is true for our earthly relationships, how much more true is it when it comes to God? Do we communicate to God as often as we communicate to other people? Do we tell God our fears, our desires, our wants, our needs? Do we even tell God how much we love Him, how much we adore Him, how much we need Him in our life? Some people can feel that this is a one-sided conversation, and this is exactly what is happening here in the parable of the persistent widow. We see that this widow came continually to the judge, asking, Get justice for me from my adversary. The widow kept asking the judge, and we clearly can see that the judge did not fear God nor feared man. He yielded to the widow's request simply because she was persistent in her coming. We have to evaluate our hearts whenever we are talking to God. Are we speaking to God simply because we want something from Him? or because we desire to have relationship with Him. As long as our heart is right, we can then understand God's perspective on the matter. So what is interesting is that an evil judge was able to give the widow exactly what she wanted because she continually came to him. Now, if an evil judge is able to give a widow what she needs, how much more God will give to us what we need? Jesus said, hear what the unjust judge said, shall not God avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him, though he bears long with them? So Jesus is telling us that he understands how we feel. He understands and he knows that we speak to God day and night, asking and praying and praying and praying. And sometimes we can get dejected, we can feel deflated, we can lose heart, understandably, because we are not understanding why God is taking so long to answer us. But the one thing that is so interesting is that Jesus confirms to us that God hears our cries. It says here, shall not God avenge his own elect who cry out day and night to him? God hears you when you pray. God hears you when you cry out to him. He hears the silent prayers that you pray in your heart. He sees how you feel. He knows the situation that you are in. Every time you prayed to God, be it because you wanted something, because you wanted deliverance from something, he heard you. Sometimes it feels like God is not hearing us, but he hears you. Jesus tells us here that he hears us. That alone should give us some degree of confidence to know that our prayers are not going unanswered. Our prayers are not just going somewhere and not being heard by God. God hears every cry that we give out to him, be it verbally, be it emotionally, be it within our hearts silently. He hears us. Isn't that incredible? God hears even the silent cries of our hearts. Jesus also says he knows that God can be delayed. Jesus says he knows that we can get frustrated, that we can lose heart by God delaying his answer to us. But Jesus gives us a promise in verse 8, saying that God will avenge them speedily. Jesus is basically telling us that God hears our cries that we give to him, and he will avenge us speedily. But now you see that there might be a contradiction here, because on one hand we are praying and we are losing heart because God is not hurrying up. God is not avenging us speedily, yet Jesus says that he will avenge us speedily. So what is the difference? The difference is delayed gratification. God is waiting for an opportune time to avenge you. God is waiting for the right time and the right place to give you your deliverance, the thing that you want, or the way that needs to be made for you. Sometimes God delays us simply because it is not the right time. A lot of us fight with this because we need the help now. We need the money now. We need the joy. We need the peace. We need the way out now. And sometimes when we keep crying out to God and he's telling us it's not the right time, it's not the right time, we can get angry with God. Yet God tells us that we need to trust him. He will avenge us speedily. He hears our cries. He hears our concerns. But one thing we need to understand is that we need to trust God. He hears us and he will answer us. We need to trust him that he will avenge us as he says he will when the time is right. Why does God wait for the right time? Because the right time is when his impact will be made most powerful. The importance of timing in anything is essential. Oftentimes, the best meals are cooked slowly and with a schedule. Sometimes the best products, the best clothing, the best of anything goes through a long and arduous process by which it gets made. And sometimes, even though we want the products now, we need it quickly, we need it done fast, the best answers often take the longest time. Likewise with God, His answers, His solutions, His vengeance takes time. The question is, do we trust God with timing? Do we trust God that He will avenge us, that He does hear us, but that we just need to wait for Him to come onto the scene and change the situation around? Jesus promises us that He will avenge us. The question now remains with us. Will we continue to trust Him? Will we have faith in God that He will come through for us? This is why Jesus ends this parable by saying, when the Son of Man comes, will He really find faith on the earth? Will He find people who are praying to Him and trusting Him? Will He find people who are still praising His name and holding on to His promises? Or will He find people who have given up? Will He find people who have been dejected and let sorrow and doubt and disappointment enter their heart? Jesus has promised us that God will avenge us. Will we hold on to the end? Our life as a Christian is not a sprint, it is a marathon. We need to run with endurance, knowing that God's Spirit is with us. We want everything fast, we want everything quick, but God takes His time on purpose. And if He chooses to take His time on an issue that you are praying to Him for, on making a way, or on anything that you have asked God for, if He is taking time on it, do you have the faith and the trust to know that He knows what He's doing? Do you trust God that though He delays, that He will help you, that He will avenge you? That is the real question. And let me remind you, if you look back on your own life, God has come through for you before. God has helped you in situations and circumstances that seem so big, yet you triumphed over them. You did not triumph over them in your own strength. You triumphed over them because God was there. God came into the situation. And oftentimes when you look back, you find out it was at the right place, at the right time, the most opportune moment that God showed up and changed everything. So now in your own circumstance, in your own trial, do you trust God that He will do it again? If He did it before, surely He will do it again. Will Christ find faith on the earth? When Jesus returns, will you be one of the people that are counted as those that held on to the end, still trusting, still believing, still praying, knowing that God will avenge you? We must have an unshakable, persistent faith, knowing with full confidence that God will be good to us. This is exactly what the widow did. She knew that if she was persistent and patient enough, she will get the justice that she required. And if an evil judge was able to be worn down by her continual coming, how much more so will God be able to avenge us when the time is right, knowing that He is a good judge, that He wants to help us, but He is waiting for the right time? Will we be patient? Will we be as persistent as this widow was? If the widow could be persistent with an evil judge, surely it will be easier for us as Christians, knowing that we go to a supreme judge, a good judge who loves us, who cares for us, who is going to help us. Will we be persistent in knowing that God will avenge us, that God will come through for me, because He's done so before, and because I know His nature and His character? Therefore I trust in Him and I rely on Him, and I have full confidence that He will come through for me. Do you have that trust? Do you have that faith in God? This kind of faith only grows in times of adversity. Sometimes God delays because He wants to grow your faith. In times like these where you don't hear an answer from God and it feels like God doesn't hear you, you have to make a decision whether you're going to believe in God or not. You have to make the decision that either you believe that God will help you or He won't. But always look back in your life and recognize that God's hand has been over your life through many situations. If God was with you then, He will be with you now. Delayed gratification, in a way, is an oxymoron. You will get gratification, but there's a delay. The bad is with the good. And it's in times like these where we need to have the faith and the trust in God that He will be good to us, that He will help us, that He will deliver us, and that He will come through for us when the time is right. Do not lose hope. Do not lose heart. Keep praying. Keep asking God. Keep coming to Him with your request. As Jesus has shown us, God hears us when we cry out to Him day and night. He will avenge us speedily. That is the promise that we have from God. Whatever situation you are faced with, keep going to God. Don't lose heart. Keep holding on to that firm foundation of Jesus Christ. He will avenge you speedily when the time is right.